You know that recurring dream you have where you show up to a really important job interview in your underwear? That dream is a reality for NFL players, and that job interview is called the NFL Scouting Combine. The only difference is they actually look good in their underwear. By now we all know and, well, maybe not love, but at least like the NFL Combine, if not for no other reason, then it gives us the tiny oasis of pseudo-football in between the Super Bowl and the draft. We're used to the process now, the 40-yard dashes, the broad jumps, the 3-cone drills, but the combine wasn't always like this. In fact, there wasn't always a combine, and I'm going to tell you about that right after this. Do you know what's worse than a 40-year-old bald man telling you about personal grooming habits? The fact that you didn't think of it yourself. And that's where Manscape comes in, the absolutely best solution for below-the-waist grooming and beyond. Manscape.com was featured on Shark Tank, and it took a team of aerospace engineers to develop a clippers that safely and neatly trims your jungle foliage down at a speed of 6,000 RPMs. And you know what they say, clip the hedges and the deck looks bigger. The Lawnmower 2.0 features titanium, replaceable blades that make this clipper legit the best one I have ever used. In fact, I have two. One for my face and one for my nether regions, and you can see here they are clearly labeled to avoid confusion. On top of this trimmer, when you buy the Perfect Package 2.0, you get essential grooming gear you won't find anywhere else. Crop preserver, crop duster, cologne for your balls, and of course, the crop mop, wipes designed to keep things fresh down there. So after this video, head on over to manscape.com from the link below and use my code POINT20 and get 20% off your first order. Again, that's code POINT20 for 20% off. And if you act now, we'll throw in the Shed travel bag for free. Manscape.com, #1 in men's below-the-waist grooming. Today we're breaking down the history of the NFL Combine. How did it come about? Why do they do the drills they do? Who used the Combine to help their stock the most, and whose stock plummeted? Before the first iteration of the NFL Combine in 1982, teams had to individually work out players they wanted to draft. Sensing the inefficiency, Cowboys GM Tex Schramm proposed the idea to have a more streamlined scouting event where teams and prospects could meet together in a giant cattle herd of football evaluation. The first iteration of what would become the Scouting Combine was known as the National Invitational Camp. 2 years later, in 1984, the NIC and two other scouting events joined forces to become the first official NFL Scouting Combine, which featured prospects like Boomer Esiason, Wilbur Marshall, and Carl Banks. Not until 1987 did the Combine move from Arizona to its permanent home, Indianapolis, Indiana, home of the Colts. When the NFL Network was birthed in 2003, they televised the Combine a year later in 2004 when football fans could watch Big Ben perform passing drills and see Phillip Rivers run a 5.08 40-yard dash. What was once a trivial part of the NFL offseason became a serious television event, culminating in ABC airing the Combine for the first time in 2019. And what is it that the fans really want to see? The Combine is a week-long process that involves a series of mental and physical tests ranging from 40-yard dashes, vertical jumps, 3-cone drills, positional drills to the Wonderlic test, and individual team interviews. It's a group of superhuman athletes jockeying for position to see who is the most superhuman of them all. And in case you're wondering, this is what it looks like when an average guy goes through the same drill.
We did one.
Let's talk about the sexiest test in the Combine, the 40-yard dash. Also known as Al Davis's natural aphrodisiac. It's not an official race in track and field or really anything else, so why 40 yards? The test was designed to be that length because that's the average distance of a punt in the NFL, and scouts can use it to evaluate a player's value on special teams, where most rookies will end up in their first few seasons. It's obviously an indicator of speed and acceleration, but it's not always an indicator of future success in the NFL. Case in point, Bengals wide receiver John Ross ran the fastest 40 time in Combine history 2 years ago at 4.22 and jumped his stock from a borderline first rounder to the 9th pick in the draft. After 2 seasons, he has just 21 catches for 210 receiving yards. Conversely, it can hurt a player's stock when really shouldn't factor in at all. Take Terrell Suggs for example. He was a standout at ASU, racking up 24 sacks in his final season in Tempe. But when he ran the 40, he clocked in at 4.84 and dropped from a consensus top 5 pick to the 10th spot in the draft, where the Baltimore Ravens happily snatched him up and have kept him for a decade and a half, to the tune of 6 Pro Bowls and 1 Defensive Player of the Year award, and he's likely headed to the Hall of Fame. Compare that to guys like Darius Haywood-Bay and Matt Jones, whose stock rose dramatically after running in a straight line with no pads, and it becomes obvious that the 40-yard dash isn't the end-all be-all. Unless, of course, your NFL Network's Rich Eisen, and running the 40 in a suit and tie has become a yearly tradition. And maybe the Combine as a whole shouldn't have the impact it does. In 1995, Boston College linebacker Mike Mamula arrived in Indianapolis expecting to be a third-round pick until he tore it up with a stadium full of scouts watching. Mamula was one of the first prospects to train specifically for the Combine, and as a result came away with a 4.58 time in the 40, 26 reps of 225 pounds on the bench press, a vertical jump of 38.5 inches, and a 49 out of 50 on the Wonderlic. By the time he left the RCA Dome, Mamula had boosted himself into the top 10. The Eagles ultimately traded up to take him at 7, and while he had a decent career, it only lasted 5 years in the NFL, and he never lived up to the billing he earned himself at the Combine. If you're not convinced, look at a few players who weren't invited to the Combine at all. Doug Baldwin, Malcolm Butler, Julian Edelman, Antonio Gates, Chris Harris Jr., Philip Lindsay, and Adam Thielen never got that invite in the mail. And I'd say they're doing fine without it. It's not all physical, however. There's 2 crucial mental evaluations that take place over the course of the week in Indy: individual interviews and, of course, the Wonderlic test. In the interviews, teams will ask anything and everything, including questions like, do you have 2 testicles? Do you find your mother attractive? Do you like men? What's your murder weapon of choice? No word on Aaron Hernandez's official answer. These questions almost always make headlines and leave fans and media wondering why teams would pry like this, but their purpose is to get the player out of his comfort zone and see how they react to probing questions like, say, is your mother a prostitute? Based on their response, they get an idea of the player's composure level. Next comes the Wonderlic. It's a test that's supposed to stay private, but like QB Gio Carmazzi's bladder on the first day of camp, it always seems to leak out. The test is designed to evaluate aptitude using 50 multiple choice questions in a 12-minute span. Ever since Tom Landry started using the test to evaluate players in 1970, it's been a staple of the NFL scouting process. The highest average score comes from offensive tackles, who average a 26 out of 50, while running backs have the lowest average at around 16. The only player to ever record a perfect score was Harvard's Pat McInally, a 5th-round pick by the Bengals in 1975, who played punter and wide receiver for 10 years in the league. The lowest score, Morris Claiborne, who got just 4 questions right in 2012. I think putting your name on it counts as 2. Other notable scores include 48s by Ben Watson and Ryan Fitzpatrick, a 41 from Calvin Johnson, 38 by Matt Stafford, 37 by Andrew Luck, and only 33 by Tom Brady. See, he's not the best at everything. On the whole, the NFL Combine isn't the most important part of the scouting process. The Combine exists to confirm what the scouts already saw on tape and suss out any red flags that might not otherwise be apparent. It's fair to be suspicious of the prospect whose stock rises after the Combine, and it might be a good value to go after a player who took a bigger nosedive in Indy than Jim Irsay. Other sports have their own version of the Combine too. The NBA holds its workout every May, and maybe it doesn't hold the same significance because the Sonics were smart enough to take Kevin Durant number 2 overall despite not being able to complete 1 rep on the bench press. Major League Baseball has no Combine at the present, but as of 4 years ago are considering putting players through physical tests and health evaluations to ensure players are as fit as they appear. Problems arose in the 2014 draft when number 1 pick Brady Aiken and the Houston Astros couldn't strike a deal after they learned of Aiken's damaged elbow. One instance in which a pre-draft evaluation could have spotted a red flag before the most valuable pick in the draft was spent on a pitcher with a broken wing. Don't expect any other sports to have combines on the level of the NFL. or anybody to care as much. It's a bizarre, unique, and sometimes uncomfortable TV experience. And as far as televised events where everyone is in their underwear, sorry NFL, the Victoria's Secret fashion show still wins. I've had that dream a few times. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do not forget to head on over to manscape.com and use my code POINT20 for 20% off your first order. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more interesting videos on sports, or just watch my other videos. That's cool too. I'm 5 Points Vids, and you made it to the end of this video.